we may not finish today's lesson because I just kept expanding. So we have 5 chapters of the Bible to get through. So here's the whole thing. God tells Moses, tell Pharaoh, let the Israelites go, but though I multiply my signs and wonders, he will not listen to you. I will lay my hand on Egypt with mighty acts of judgment, and I will bring out my divisions. That's an intentional word choice. It's meant to be a military term. And a few times through the Exodus account, you'll hear the people of God, slaves, leaving Egypt, described as though they were a conquering army, that they had pillaged the Egyptians, that they were God's divisions marching out. And then the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So there's 2 goals in the plagues. One, my people are going to finally get let go. The promise I made to Abraham 430 years before is going to come to fulfillment. But the second thing is I want the Egyptians to understand who is really God here. So today's lesson, we'll spend some time on that. There is a basic pattern of how these things work. It has, depending upon who you read, I have about 7 steps in my pattern. But one of the first signs before a real plague happens was at the burning bush. Moses was kind of going, God, how, if I go back, how are people going to know that I'm really like your chosen one to do this? And God says, throw it on your staff, and the staff becomes a snake. And Moses is like, whoa, okay. So Aaron, Moses' brother, who becomes the head of the priesthood eventually, he also is part of this process. And Aaron also has a staff. And when Pharaoh says, when they come and they tell Pharaoh, hey, let my people go, God says so. Pharaoh's going to go, well, then fine, prove it. Do a miracle. So Aaron throws down his staff, and it will become a snake, just like yours did at the burning bush. He does. Pharaoh summons his wise men, sorcerers, and magicians, and because of their secret arts, they can do the same thing. Someone has told me, I don't know if it's true, that there are various types of snakes in that part of the world that if you grab them just right, like behind the ears, snakes don't have ears, but that they will get like stiff. They won't coil, but they'll get, and that's what I've been told. I have no idea if it's true, and I did not take time to research it. Feel free to say, I don't know how to Google search that one, but I'm sure there's something. God knows. Yeah, anyhow. Don't worry about it. But, so they all throw down their staffs. They all become snakes, but Aaron's snake eats all the other snakes. Pharaoh's heart becomes hard. He would not listen. So it affects his heart, it affects his ears. So here are the elements that you'll see. Not every plague in the plague cycle has all of the elements. Pharaoh is confronted, let my people go. Pharaoh refuses, he hardens his heart. God judges Pharaoh's disobedience, and he and all of Egypt suffers. More all of Egypt than him, I think. Pharaoh says, okay, stop, time out, I give up, you can go. And I promise, the people can go. So God ends the plague, sends relief. Pharaoh reneges on his promise, his hard heart comes forward again, and the cycle repeats. So here's the first plague, water into blood. Pharaoh's heart is unyielding. The Lord says to Moses, he won't, because we've already had the staff incident. So go down, confront him when he's going to the banks of the Nile. Let my people go. So step 1. So here is a guy named Tissot, Tissent, O-T, Tissot, Joseph Tissot, a French painter, just did this tremendous set of biblical paintings and sketches. So this was his idea of what it looked like. His stuff is in the Brooklyn Museum in New York. But I oftentimes, when I'm looking for Bible art, I go to Tissot. So fish are going to die, river will stink, you can't drink the water. But somehow the Egyptian magicians are able to copy this miracle um, through their secret arts. Pharaoh's heart becomes hard, step 2, doesn't listen, just as the Lord had said. Uh, um, and so everybody else is stuck trying to like dig holes and let the water filter through the soil so they can find something to drink. Um, and yeah, let's just move on. So here is my first idea. There was an Egyptian deity called Hapi, and it can be spelled a couple of different ways because it's, you know, it's hieroglyphics, right? And you're guessing at pronunciation. But he was the Lord of fishes and marshes, or the Lord of the river that brings life. And so, in some ways, the first God that's in contest is this one. This is off of. This is from the British Museum. It's a copy of a painting that was done in a tomb, and you'll notice that there's kind of two of everything. Sometimes you'll see two deities together, and they think that's because they're talking about the upper and the lower Nile are united in Egypt under one river deity that is the Lord and bringer of life, but also the god of the fish that everybody ate, and all the fish die. So it's kind of a strike against that particular god. Is this process making sense? Okay. Second plague is frogs. Again, let my people go. I'll send frogs. They'll come into your palace. They'll come everywhere, and you won't like it. So here, Pharaoh is invited to end the plague, which is a unique item to it. Pharaoh summons Moses and Aaron at the end of it. Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away, and I'll let your people go. And Moses says, I leave you the honor of setting the day and the time, or setting the time for me to pray for you, for your officials, your people, so that your houses may be rid of the frogs, except for the few that are going to stay in the Nile. But Pharaoh says, well, do it tomorrow. Not now. Now is the time. But okay, it'll be as you say. I want you to know that there's no one like the Lord our God. In studying and preparing this lesson, frogs were a sign of fertility in ancient Egypt, according to people who study this sort of thing. And just like in India right now, you'll see cattle walking around because cows are sacred. Frogs were sacred. And every spring, when the floods would come that would drop the new topsoil and make Egypt so fertile, the frogs would come and babies would be born. And so they had this cosmology in their head that frogs are fertility. And so there was this idea of you don't want to kill a frog because, that could interfere. So we don't know if that was part of it or not, but, why he's like, I want to get busy with the missus tonight. Don't kill the frogs till tomorrow. I don't know. But anyhow. So there is Hequet, or Heket, who is the goddess of fertility. She has the title of divine midwife and helped with the birth of children. And you can look at her head and understand why frogs and fertility went together. Then the next one, gnats, mosquitoes. The Hebrew word is just kind of small buzzing insect, and nobody's quite sure what it is. If you want to go down several rabbit holes, you can Google, 10 plagues, and there are really educated people with multiple PhDs who said, well, it could be this, could be this, could be this. Then there's like guys in the middle, parish pastors like me, who are going, I don't know. And then there's the people at the very other end who, I forget the fancy name for this, but they are under the curse of ignorance, but they use it with great confidence. And they will tell you exactly what it means because they heard it. So gnat, mosquito, something. And this one is unique because it contains a testimony from the Egyptian magicians who up to this point had been able to copy everything. Well, they didn't copy the frogs. They did the staff and they did the water into blood, and they try to reproduce this one and can't. So they go to Pharaoh and say, "This is the finger of God. We are up against something way bigger than what we can do." But this is where Pharaoh's heart is hard, it affects his hearing, cannot understand it. Just does not make sense to him that there could be a real God because he is a deity. So the Egyptian deity affected by this plague would have been Geb. He was the god of the earth, i.e., and there's kind of the cosmology on this is a little. This was primarily the earth that was right around the Nile, the fertile. There was another deity that was like the desert, the unhospitable stuff. And in Egyptian cosmology, Geb is the god of the earth. There is another goddess, that's the goddess of the sky. She comes up in a little bit. And then there's a goddess that is in between the two. And then who had sex with who and whose kids belong to who and who killed who and how did that all work. It gets crazy. If you like it, have fun with it. Next plague are the flies. This is the change here is that there is going to be a distinction. Goshen, where God's people live, they're not going to be affected. Just the Egyptians. So up till this point, the people of God have also been having to dig alongside the Nile to get water. They have been dealing with frogs. They have been dealing with everything else right alongside the Egyptians. And now at Plague 4, God says, nope, my people aren't going to deal with this, just your people. Because I want you to know that I am the Lord. And here is a very Old Testament biblical thing. I, the Lord, am in this land. Many people back in that time in the Bible had this idea that gods were geographically located. So that, yes, you might be worshiping your God in the hills over there, but your God is the God of the hills. I worship my God over here. My God is the God of the plains. And so you do you, I'll do me. In fact, when you get into the story of judges and kings, there's times where a military battle goes badly. And they go, curses, what went wrong? And in their after-action report, they go, I know what it was. Their God is the God of the plains, and our God is the God of the hills. So we need to propitiate their God so we can ride our chariots and win. Yes, that's what we'll do. And so they have this geographic, and God is kind of working with that here to say, I want you to understand that here in Egypt, I am God here too. It's not just that I belong to these people over there that you have currently enslaved. It's, I'm the God of everything. And Pharaoh is having a hard time wrapping his head around that. So, Kep-free is the god of the morning sun, creation, and rebirth. And if you look at his head, you can kind of see the fade over. This one is the weakest one of all my list. I studied a bunch of different lists. Everybody liked this one because it looks good. But if you go into Egyptian cosmology, he's actually a dung beetle, not a fly or a mosquito or a gnat, or not a fly. So, anyhow. So now the livestock die off. And I'm going to bring a terrible plague on your livestock. And then they list all the different kinds of livestock. The unique element is that Pharaoh is now starting to goes and confirms. Because God says, Egyptian livestock are going to die. Livestock in Goshen aren't. My people aren't going to face this loss that you are. And Pharaoh sends people and they go to the land of Goshen and they go, yeah, sure enough, all the animals there are still alive, but here with us, they're dead. But his heart remains unyielding. It's a hard heart. So Hathor is the goddess of love, beauty, music, and motherhood, known as the symbolic mother of the pharaohs. And you can understand why people think that this was the Egyptian deity that the death of cattle we're going to be working on. Next came the plague of boils. Take a handful of soot from the furnace, have Moses toss it in the air. Festering boils will break out on people and animals throughout the land. What's unique on this one is the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils that were on them and on all the Egyptians. But Pharaoh's heart stays hard. The idea of they could not stand in front of, I always thought that just meant it hurt. And they were like, no, we have boils on our feet. We're not walking. Some folks, oh, hi. Good. Getting ready for the baptism? Yeah. Excellent. So it could be, or it could be that some authors say, they were unclean, ceremonially unclean. And that's why they couldn't. The Isis is the goddess of medicine. The story behind her is that her brother, who was also her husband, Osiris, and she was considered also one of the mothers of Pharaoh. It's an interesting story. Her husband gets killed by a different god and cut into 14 bits and sprinkled all over the land. And she goes and collects all the bits and puts them together, and it comes back to life. But she's missing one bit, which is his penis. She can't find it, so it's sort of a Lauren Boebert thing, if you're old enough to remember that one. And yes? What is the symbol in her hand? This one here? Yeah. That is an ankh. It is an Egyptian symbol of eternal life. It looks like a cross, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and then you have the loop on top that's meant to be like it keeps going. But she makes one out of wood and manages to get pregnant through it. So again, interesting Egyptian deity study this week. The next thing that's coming is killer hail. I did not understand this until I moved to Colorado. We would have occasional little bits of hail in Wisconsin, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now we understand what this looks like. Here we see the next unique element in this the plague cycle. There are some people who are starting to fear God more than they fear Pharaoh and the Egyptian deities. So we're up to 7, and there are people going, oh yeah, there is real power here. And so those who feared the Lord, they hurry to get everything inside, but those who don't lose everything. This is Nut, the goddess of the sky who protects the world. She who protects. She is the discoverer of the sky, and she is in a relationship with Geb, the god of the earth. God reveals the reason. I'm going to send the full force of my plagues against you, your officials and people, so that you know there's no one like me in all the earth. By now, we heard this in church. I could have wiped you out, but I have spared you for this very purpose, that I might show my power and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. But I know that you and your officials still don't fear me. Then comes the plague of locusts. They devour everything. The Pharaoh's officials are starting to talk back. And they are starting to say, would you please just let these people go? Let them go and do their thing. Let them go and worship. Don't you realize Egypt is ruined? Here's where you start to see the hardness of Pharaoh's heart that has affected his ability to see and understand. I mentioned in church, working in alcohol rehab, I actually worked in it was called care unit, and this is where sometimes the court sent people there, sometimes family put them in. This was the 28-day try to get clean and sober. And you talk to people who have, they have lost their marriage, they're alienated from their kids, they're deeply in debt, their life is just chaos. And you ask them, what do you think caused this? They're like, I have no idea. I have no idea why I'm here in rehab. There is no reason for me to be here. And you're going, what about your wife? Oh, that bleep, bleep, bleep. It's all her fault. Or what about your kids? Well, she turned them against me. What about, your business? Well, down market, I mean, it was just everything because I will not see the truth of my addiction. The goal for 28 days was to help people come to terms of this is the reality of your life now. Here is the cause. And some of them would refuse to get it. Some did. But it was that was a working definition for me of what a hard heart looks like. If you've ever dealt with someone in the throes of addiction, you understand. The Egyptian deity affected would have been Seth. So, God of ancient God. Oh, I loved his. Seth was kind of one of those deities that you feared in a servile sense, not in like we fear God because he's good. You feared Seth because he was bad, and you bought him off because he is the god of desert storms, disorder, violence, and foreigners. You just didn't trust. God's purposes say, look, Pharaoh's heart is hardened, and the hearts of his officials. I'm doing this so that I may perform these signs of mine among them, that you may tell your children and grandchildren how I dealt harshly with the Egyptians, and how I perform my signs among them, so that you may know that I am the Lord. By the time you get to Deuteronomy, which comes later, they're in that's the Deuto is from like dittograph. It's a repetition of what went on before. Deuteronomy has the line that says, remember, tell these stories to your children. Talk about them when you're walking. Talk about them when you wake up. Talk about them when you lay down. So, Dad, tell us the story of the 10 plagues again. And it would, what was the point? So you understand. We'll see this even clearer in next week's story, the Red Sea crossing. Final plague, darkness, unique elements. This time God does not say, let my people go, because Pharaoh has committed. And one of the odd things I noticed in the Hebrew is Goshen is now seen as multiple places. So I don't know. There's an area called Goshen, but I don't know if there were settlements or they moved differently. But where God's people is now referred to as places. So the deity would have been the sun god Ra. And their thinking was every morning he got in his chariot in the east, rode the chariot of the sun all across the sky, and at night some other deity put the sun in a barge and rode it back underground, and it came up again. So death of the firstborn, midnight, Tawaret was the ancient god of birth and fertility. She was literally the lady of the birth house. They made her as fierce as possible to protect women that were due. So, well, it does, right? So it's meant to be an alligator. This is the alligator tail, but she's also a hippopotamus. One of the most deadly animals in Africa is the hippo. And evidently they knew that back in Egypt. Pharaoh, get up, leave, hard-hearted pharaohs. So there's a big debate that you'll have sometimes, people going, did God harden Pharaoh's heart? Did Pharaoh harden his heart? And it kind of works out to Pharaoh kept doing it, and finally God said, fine, I'm not going to try anymore. So final commentary, I'll leave that one up when I head upstairs. If a sinner consistently rejects repentance and a change of heart, the Lord finally inflicts this obdurancy. I had to look that word up. Stubbornly resistance to influence for change, persistently impenitent. If God finally says, you want to live that way, go and live that way. I'm going to leave you on your own. And it becomes a curse upon him. I will answer questions up in the lobby as I get ready for second service.